Okay, this video, I have to make a video about Elliot Rodger and the shooting in Santa Barbara. And this is because, as you might have suspected, I have a lot of things common with this guy. Now, let me be very cautious here talking about this. I want everyone to know I'm not crazy. I'm not going to go killing people. I don't get into a crazy murderous rage when I see other couples kissing. I'm not going to kill anybody. I'm not going to stab anybody. I'm not going to, you know, I think I'm more mentally stable than that. But with that in mind, I think what we're seeing with this guy is a combination of a lot of factors. And some of those factors I understand, some of them I don't. Um, I read his manifesto, and a lot of the things he said. For one, he is an excellent writer. As crazy as he is, a lot of psychopaths are excellent and are pretty intelligent. And a lot of what he said does resonate with me. I know that sounds scary. Let me remind people one more time, I'm not going to kill anybody. But there were several points about his manifesto that I wanted to talk about. First of all, basically what this all really comes down to is, you can say that he was racist. You can say that he hated women, that he was a misogynist, this and that. I think the real thing he was angry at was himself and his place in the world. I don't think you can really judge him by what he said, because I think when people, he was driven to a point of desperation. He had an extremely low self-esteem, as I do. And when you have self-esteem that low, you know, rather than trying to change yourself, a lot of times you look for scapegoats for why things are the way they are. You know, I mean, it was clear to me that, he doesn't even, I mean, I'm sure he actually, if he, I mean, he didn't even try with women to start. And, the chances are he was not going to be able to get the women he was interested in. And that sort of is where it comes down to the main point of this thing is that, in a certain way, it's not fair that some people are able to get any woman they want and some people aren't. It's most of the time, he wasn't that he wasn't able to get women because of, you know, because of I mean, he could have gotten some woman. He could have settled for whatever he could get, but he was short. He was short, and obviously he was mentally unstable. Now you could say, well, because he's short, because he's mentally unstable, he has to settle for what he can get. Or maybe he should work on his mental instability and then he should settle for what he can get. Because it's hard to settle for anything when you're mentally unstable. But I think that's sort of, basically the whole point of this is, I don't think it was his fault necessarily that he was mentally unstable. We're born to the world with certain attributes and we can't control them. And I think I understand his jealousy. Some men are born into the world, and it's not necessarily always innate, but it's a combination of circumstances. Some men are born into the world with fathers that are that pass on certain genes that make you a better, more attractive mate to women. Those genes might be that you're more attractive. Those genes might be that you're more physically able. Those genes might be that you're tall. Those genes might be that you're less addicted. You have a less addictive personality. Those genes might be that you know you might be more introverted or more or less or more extroverted. And it's not just genes either. It's circumstance. You were born. Some people are born into wealth. A lot of people think this guy was wealthy. He put on an image of wealth, but I don't think he had really a lot of access necessarily. I mean, his father, I think, was definitely somewhat wealthy, but he himself was not wealthy. Obviously, he didn't even have a job. He didn't have any skills. He didn't even try to get any skills. But all I'm saying is, there's a lot of things that are out of our control, and it's if you're one of the people in life for whatever reason, there's a combination of genetics and circumstances that you're not attractive to the opposite sex. It can get lonely really fast. I mean, certainly everyone has the option of settling for what they can get. But, you know, there's an inherent unfairness in the world where, some guys can, they naturally attract beautiful women that are out of other people's league, and vice versa. There's some women that naturally attract good-looking guys. So, there's a certain automatic unfairness. I mean, we're all aware of this. Life is unfair. I've said we've all, everyone knows this to some extent. So, I understand the fact that he was angry that life is unfair to start. Second of all, I wanted to say that when life is unfair, it only becomes more unfair over time. So, it's sort of a vicious cycle because people who are born to parents that sort of it's also a matter of how do your parents raise you psychologically. He was born with a broken home. His parents broke up when he was very young, and his father uh, may have been having an affair and was with a woman, had his mistress, or the Elliot's stepmother moved in with them shortly after the divorce. So that was traumatic. And there are other traumatic things. It's traumatic to him that he was short and he was bullied in school. And being bullied is no joke. I was bullied a lot. And when you're bullied a lot, or when you undergo trauma like he did, it's you are sort of an innocent victim. People that are subject to unfortunate circumstances like that are innocent victims. And what's sad about that is when you're a victim, you sort of become a victim for the rest of your life. Especially if when you're a victim at a young age, you become a victim for the rest of your life. You internalize being a victim, and there's not, unless somebody gets you help, or unless you recognize that you're a victim, then there's not a lot you can do. And even if you do recognize you're a victim, you may not have the physical attributes or the mental attributes that can put you in a position to overcome those kind of things. It's like, even if he'd learned to become more accepting of his parents' divorce, it doesn't mean he wasn't going to get bullied in school. If you're short and small, kids are mean. They bully you if they can. And, if you're bullied severely, you're going to have severe, trauma from that. And when you have severe trauma, it changes your behavior. And he had a hard time relating to women. He had a hard time relating to his peers in general as a result of that trauma, and also maybe as a result of his innate introversion. So, you have that. And then you also have the fact that we live in a society that is extremely shallow on its surface. It promotes shallowness. It promotes, it requires children to dress a certain way, to think a certain way, and promotes competition, promotes individuality. It does not promote support when things go wrong. If you're bullied in school, or you are unfortunate enough to be somebody who does not have the physical attributes to be popular in school, you are outcast. And the media sort of reinforces that. It teaches people, if you're not what you see on TV, these people that are using products, they're trying to sell these products, so they want to make everybody think that this is the image of success. In order to be this image of success, you have to buy the product. And if you are not this image of success that they tie in with the product, although it's, really just mind control. If you're not this image of success, you're a loser. And you're not worthy of being a friend. You're not worthy to be in a relationship. You're not worthy to, become part of the fabric of society. It's your job to aspire to be the people on TV. If you're not doing this, there's something wrong with you, and you should not, be treated with the same respect as somebody who is a social climber, somebody who is obsessed with obtaining consumer goods. And so this is a mind control technique that teaches people, it makes kids more likely to bully. It makes kids more likely to label other kids as outcasts or to treat them that way. And it's a very isolating experience, I know from my own personal experience. I had one friend in junior high school, and he abandoned me when I was in 8th grade because I wasn't popular, and to be seen with me was hurting his social standing. And, I don't know, maybe he would have embraced my differences if it wasn't for the pervasive, shallow culture that is shown on television. Now, when you're abandoned by people and when you have trauma, you don't really know how to. It's like you start to distrust people. When people bully you, or when you've experienced trauma at a young age, you say, how can I trust anyone? And you become introverted automatically. You don't want to spend time with other people because it reminds you of how you're not popular and they are. And people will take every opportunity that they get to remind you that they have a higher status than you. They're more attractive to women than you are, or women will remind other girls that they're more attractive to men than the other girls are. There's a constant, especially when you're coming of age in the world of puberty, and that's one of the things he mentions. We are all to some extent equals when we're younger, and you reach puberty, and all of a sudden things become a lot more animalistic. You start seeing alpha males, or men. Certain men have the traits that designate them as alpha males, and usually those traits are a certain aggressiveness and a certain subtle domination of other people. And he talks about this in his manifesto. This domination goes on. The people who have it good, the people that don't have to experience trauma, the people that are attractive to the opposite sex, they go through life and they can build upon this. They can become stronger people through it. They have confidence, women like them, they have friends, people look up to them. It's sort of a self-reinforcing cycle of good. So when you're on the end, it's hard not to be envious of that if you're somebody who never experienced that. if you're in the cycle of bad, then things get worse and worse. You start with trauma, you're outcast, you're isolated from everyone else. People are less likely to talk to you. People are less likely to be friends with you. And the more you're alone, the more people mistreat you because you're alone. People start mistreating you because you're alone, as they think there's something wrong with you. And the more people start to mistreat you, the more you want to back away from other people. And the less you trust people. And the more you start to resent people. And the more you're envious of people. Because you see that world from afar and you live in your own private hell of trauma and isolation. So, that part of it I understand. I understand how he got to be where he was. It can be frustrating. It can be frustrating your whole life to look on other people who have been born with more favorable traits or have been blessed with more fortunate circumstances and see all the success they're having and how their success builds upon itself. And watching your own failure build upon itself. It's frustrating. It feels like, why me? Why did things have to work out like this for me? And there's not a lot you can do about it. You can, if you're lucky, you can maybe see a psychologist and, they can try to get you to understand that everybody has value. But the real problem is, we do not live in a society that fosters this feeling. Our society doesn't foster the idea that you can have value if you're unique, different, unusual. Society wants you to behave in a certain mold. So even if you have a therapist who tries to make you understand the value of your differences, that is not what society at large tells people. And society at large does not tell kids to rally around everybody, to, try to understand the people who've had experienced different things and to try to console them and to help them. Society instead says no. It's every man for himself. If you've had problems, that's your fault. You've made a mistake, It all ends up coming down to being about individual choices, according to the popular ethos. If you're having problems, it's your fault. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't buy the right items. You didn't do what was necessary to be successful. And when that attitude is as pervasive as it is, you only hate yourself more and you become more withdrawn. And nobody wants to lend you a helping hand because everyone is looking to be closer to the popular people, to the successful people, because they think, oh, well, if I just spend more time with the popular and successful people, I'll become more popular and successful. I don't want to bother with anybody who's, lowly, who's struggling, because they're going to make me struggle. It's selfish and individualistic. And, I see the same thing, and I understand how he sees that. I think that's why it's so tough with women, too, because women are attracted to those kinds of men, on the whole, for the most part. Not all women. But most women want a guy who has high status, who's high social standing. And, if we were just animals, beta males in the animal world can accept that they're not the alpha male. And they still are accepted into their society of the fellow animals. Whatever I don't know if you want to call that the animal group or family, whatever. But in the human world, we are increasingly isolated if we are not part of that favored class of people who are self-reliant, who, are competitive, who are willing to go to any length to get what they want in life, even if it means amoral behavior. And I think that's one of the other reasons why, a lot of men resent women, because women look up to men who are successful in this society. But what is society, who are the successful men in society? Are they men of high moral character? Are they men who behave ethically? Maybe some of the time they are. But if you look at the men who are in charge, in control, running the planet, like look at NFL, look at what women are attracted to in what women are often attracted to. Well, a lot of women are attracted to in high school, or what the majority of women, I would say, are attracted to when they're in high school. They're attracted to athletes. Athletes get ladies, and that's because they're brutes. Most of them. They football players. They're aggressive. They take what they want. They run into other. They're not afraid to run into other men. There's all these displays of machismo, and somehow being a professional or being an athlete in school is arousing to women, and it's because there's a certain display of testosterone going on. That's what sports are. They're sort of a replacement for war. But that's what's frustrating to men who are beta males. We're not as good at war. We're not good as good at aggression. We're not as good at taking what we want, regardless of ethics and morals and regardless of the consequences. And you look at the heads of major corporations today. What do? They skirt the law any way possible. They don't care about the greater good. They care about their own success. They care about competition, about promoting themselves, regardless of the consequences. They care about accumulating wealth as a display of their alpha male status, just like they've always had. In the old days, they made statues. They have the Easter Islanders as an example. I'm listening to Jared Diamond's Collapse, and they created these statues that were a waste of resources in order to sort of puff their feathers out and say, I'm the biggest man. And these days, it's kind of the same thing. It's this, who has the nicest car? Who's got the biggest house? Who's got the best looking wife? Who, and it even goes into other things, I mean, it can be used for good sometimes, like Elon Musk. He's trying to say, I'm the best man because I care about the world. And ideally, that's the way things would be going. But it doesn't appear that they're going that way on the whole. If we had more Elon Musks, then I personally wouldn't care as much about alpha male's success, because at least we'd be headed in a positive direction. But there are very few Elon Musks in the world. There's a lot of Rex Tillerson. There's a lot of the Walton family. There's a lot of people at the top who are only concerned with their own self-promotion without considering the consequences of their profit making. So anyway, that's pretty much, the whole thing in a nutshell. And, the other side of it was he probably had some, may not have just been environmental. He also may have had some chemical imbalance that, allowed him to, because I know that there was near the end of his, reading his manifesto, things seemed relatively sane up until about the last, 20 pages or so, maybe 10 pages or so, when he he talks about how he went off his medication, I think. And there's a lot of people are saying how, or I've read a lot about how when you go off your medication, that a lot of these antidepressants make people either homicidal or suicidal. And that's yet another example of people looking for profits regardless of the consequences. The people that own these drug companies, they want to make a profit, and they don't care if people become homicidal or suicidal, just as the gun manufacturers don't care if people have access to guns when they shouldn't. They'd rather have more people having the ability to purchase guns without being particularly concerned that these guns could get into the hands of crazy people. And I know he killed people with a knife, too. So it's not just about guns, but all I'm saying is, it just reinforces the whole culture of domination that he perceived. There's a culture of domination. There's a culture of wanting to be the best. There's a culture of wanting to be the alpha male. And it's a toxic culture. And It's a individualistic culture, and when you ignore your communal responsibilities as a society to ensure that everybody is brought along to some extent, to ensure that everybody, that people don't become isolated, that people don't become alienated, you're going to see these kinds of things happen. And he is not going to be the last. The Columbine shootings, um, the Virginia Tech shootings, a lot of the shootings that have happened, these are resulting from, a lot of these are the result of men who can't compete against alpha males and feel like they have no recourse. They want to be able to compete and they can't, and you know, pretty much the world stigmatizes them for that and says you're worthless. You have nothing to offer, and you may as well just continue to live your life as a slave. You should go about living the rest of your life subservient to those men who were successful at being alpha males, who did become the most powerful men in society. But it's your job to keep your head down and to do what they say for the rest of your life. Your managers, your CEOs, they're in charge, and your opinion doesn't matter. You're worthless. Just keep your head down and do what they say. And personally, I'm not going to go into a murderous rage over it. But what this guy said, what Elliot Rodger said, was he's a fighter. He wanted to go down and make his presence felt. He got tired of being ignored. He got tired of being isolated. Unfortunately, the way he made his presence felt was to kill people. But all of us who are marginalized the way he was want to make our presence felt. And society doesn't really give us a constructive way to do that. And, luckily for most of the people that are being marginalized are people like me who, don't have it in them to kill people or to commit suicide. Because, I don't commit suicide because of fear of death, and I don't kill people because my parents raised me to be a moral person. I don't kill people. I don't insult people I don't know. I show respect to people. But unfortunately, those aren't the ethics that are valued in our society. And that's why I think when you do have situations where you have people who, have experienced even more trauma than I have, or, maybe inclined to be fighters like this kid was, that you're going to see more of these kinds of shootings. You're going to see, groups of the outcasts gang up and shoot people. And, you could say, well, one way to stop would be to limit the amount of guns, and certainly that would keep, more mass shootings from happening. But as most people have been mentioning, he stabbed his roommates first, and so it's not just a gun issue; it's also an issue of, reminding people that there's some amount of communal responsibility. That we should not live in a hyper-individualistic world that does not consider the feelings of everyone, even those who are dispossessed, even those that aren't wealthy, and even those who, are bullied and have serious mental issues or psychological development issues from serious trauma.